I tested 1-star Nintendo Switch controllers with some of the weirdest reviews you could possibly find, from missing buttons to literal mold. I'm serious. So I purchased them to test out just how bad some of these controllers actually are. And honestly, I'm not even sure if some of them are legal. First up, the 8BitDo02, the smallest controller I've ever seen. Like, seriously, how is it this small? HanFM says, broke my Wi-Fi. I have no idea how a controller can break your Wi-Fi, but let's find out. I never write reviews, but this time I had to. Disclaimer popped up when I connected the controller saying, connection of the controller may cause disruptions to Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. Didn't think anything of it. But then it actually disrupted my Wi-Fi and none of my devices worked. Disconnected the controller from Bluetooth and waited to see if the Wi-Fi would reconnect. It didn't. Had to entirely reset the Wi-Fi before anything connected again. What's the point of a wireless controller if it cooks your Wi-Fi and Bluetooth? I wouldn't even give it a star if I could. 1 star. I have no idea how a controller can completely destroy Wi-Fi, but I'm going to test it. Amazon customer. Yes, that's their name. Dead after 3 days. Let's investigate. No drops, wasn't left in the cold or the sun, no water got onto or into it, and it died after 3 days of use. Obviously fully charged. That actually wasn't obvious, but let's continue. The D-pad no longer responds to input, tried unpairing, fully forgetting the device, charging it more, turned it off and on again, no luck. Probably just a lemon and we'll contact the company to replace it. Otherwise, it's a great little controller. If I get a replacement that doesn't die within a week, I'll change the review. The review hasn't been changed. Happy Amazonian says, it arrived broken. Seemed like a great little controller. I like 8BitDo. That being said, I don't know if I was sent a used controller or what happened in quality control, but it arrived missing a button. Return to seller. 1 star. Was the button just not put in when they made it, or how would that even work? And finally, customer says, too small for adults. It is too small for me and the buttons are hard to press. The D-pad is pretty bad. My hand isn't even that big and I kept pressing the entire D-pad at the same time. The ABXY buttons are pretty decent. Overall, I would not buy the controller for a good gaming session, nor would I buy it for gaming while traveling. 1 star. Opening time, starting with the 8BitDo tiny baby controller. Let's give it a test. Is it actually that small? I think so. By golly, it is tiny. What in the world? Does it have all the buttons? Yes, I would say so, yes. We have no home button. It's got the silicone band. Oh my goodness. It's portability if I've seen it. Look at that. Now I can bring it anywhere. After finally figuring out how to pair the controller, which could only connect via Bluetooth for some reason, I was finally able to play some games with this tiny little guy. My first impression of the overall feel was surprising. It feels clicky enough and seems to work at first. First game I want to test is Fortnite. So I booted it up and waited to see if the controller was going to break my internet or not. And thankfully, the internet seemed to be working well enough to load in Fortnite. So I opened the game and oh, this controller doesn't have enough buttons. This makes most of the games kind of unplayable. I tried to survive as long as I possibly could to get a victory royale. I even changed some of the controls, but it turns out that being able to move your head is important for some reason. But is this controller too small? Well, as we know, the customer says he kept pressing the entire D-pad at the same time, which is impossible. This could just mean that I have tiny hands, which, let's be real, I probably do. But I had no problem with the D-pad. In fact, it doesn't even let you click the whole thing at the same time. It's impossible. The customer must have gigantic hands. Holy moly. Now, as for breaking my internet, we still have yet to see. I haven't seen a pop-up yet, and the best thing we can do now is let it sit for 3 days to find out if it becomes a lemon. And worse yet, breaks the Wi-Fi. Like Ralph. That's right, these reviews are busted. The controller itself actually isn't that bad. But I question why anyone would even want one, because it literally has the same amount of buttons as a Joy-Con. So if you have a Switch, take off a Joy-Con and use it. I would assume it's for those who want to play the Switch Lite with a friend and doesn't want to buy a whole controller. So here's my review. Next up, we have the Khed Tech Wireless Switch Controller. Even from this ad, I can tell this is one of the ugliest controllers I've laid my tender eyes on. James says, horrendous input delay when in use. I trusted the reviews despite the price being so low. And while I can see this being fine for younger kids who wouldn't notice, for any kids old enough to notice it, it sucks. Buttons are also quite stiff in comparison to Xbox and PS controllers. 1 star. Allison says, the controller doesn't work properly at all. It lags. For example, you press the A button button to jump, then minutes later the character on the screen will jump. I tried everything, including resetting and all troubleshooting steps, and every time it still lags like crazy. I thought maybe it was just a dud controller. Luckily, I bought two. I tried using the second controller, and same issue. I do not recommend buying these. 1 star. So it seems like aside from the ugly looks, the latency is the prime suspect. Let's test it out. Gaming controller. This is the most basic controller box art I think I've ever seen in my life. I'm pretty sure that's Call of Duty. How was that allowed? Now let's actually open it. Okay, first impressions. It actually feels pretty good. It's clicky. It seems responsive. Yeah, that is an ugly looking controller. Although I do kind of like what it's doing with the rings. It's like the Switch 2. It's got the colors on the inside. The ad made this look much worse than it actually is. As for why a picture of the controller is on the controller, beats me. I don't know who designed this. Design-wise, it's not my favorite, but I see what they were doing there. They're making this look like a Switch 2 controller. Let's play some games with it. First off, connecting this controller to the Switch with the USB it comes in doesn't work. For some reason, it has to be paired via Bluetooth. In fact, the instructions specifically say to make sure no USB cables are connected before pairing. Why? The overall feel of the controller isn't bad at first, but after using it a while, it starts to feel a bit uncomfortable. I don't know why. That's just how it is. I feel like my hands are sliding through the back. Now looking at James' review, he says the buttons are stiff. And yeah, they are. But I wouldn't say that's really a completely bad thing like he's saying. But it's time to address the main issue that both James and Allison said: latency. Honestly, it's not as bad as I was expecting. Even comparing it to the official Nintendo Joy-Con, there's pretty much no major difference. Yes, maybe a little tiny, little bit, but not major. The real problem seems to be the controller occasionally missing inputs. Like I'd press a button and it just wouldn't register. Usually it was when I was going for some sweaty Smash Bros moves. That's when it seemed to have the latency problems. Now the gyro, on the other hand, yes, this one includes it, but the gyro did have latency. It is surprisingly accurate, it's just delayed. But my biggest concern was that this controller was going to explode. The rumble was going sicko mode. Listen. But James and Allison, it doesn't seem like the latency issue was as big a deal as you're saying. So, review busted. But I think I'm ready to write my review. Next up, these. This is the lowest overall ratings yet, but I can confidently say these are the ugliest Joy-Con I've ever seen in my life. But that's what instantly makes me want to try them. Let's check out these reviews. Louise says, we've been using these for less than 2 months, and the back part at the top slides around. We've had to switch to using them without it, because gameplay is difficult when you can't press those top buttons without the controller falling apart. 3 stars. Okay, so this is 3 stars, but let's be honest, I have no idea what he's talking about. Apparently the controller falls apart when you use it, so let's try. But first, Michelle says, total crap. Horrible, not usable, and sent back. They would constantly drop connection, and buttons would randomly not work. Let's give it a test. There's no box art, by the way. It's just a brown box. If there's any clarification that this was just sent from China, that's it. Yo, these feel 3D printed. These feel cheap as heck. Goodness, it is a little thick on the back, but the buttons are just, oh my, they're awful. And the buttons feel kind of slimy. Let's actually attach it to the Joy-Con and see what we got here. Wait a minute. These literally don't even connect to the Switch. The grips connect to the Switch, not this. Homie, that is the worst one. That is the worst one. It doesn't even, my guy, it doesn't go on the Switch, but the wrist strap connects on the Switch. They did this in reverse. They literally did this in reverse. These are the most confusing Joy-Con I've seen in my life. At first, I thought they wouldn't connect because the attachment was inside out, completely reversed. What I didn't realize was that the black part from the straps can actually be removed and inserted into the controllers, allowing them to attach and connect to the Switch, which makes a lot more sense. For a solid minute, I thought I was genuinely getting scammed and that these weren't even usable. Thankfully, I finally got them to work. Unfortunately, I still stand by these being atrocious when it comes to looks, and I'm not even going to apologize for that. But what's insane is that they feel even worse than they look, which sounds impossible, I know. The sticks and buttons feel ridiculously cheap and plasticky. The sticks snap back in a weird way and have these oddly sharp edges, which I think were meant for grip, but really just make me want to not use them. And I haven't even tested the reviews yet, but I'm already siding with Michelle on this one. Yes, they do have some unique features and they're functional, and they even have rumble. These are absolutely the worst controllers I think I've ever used in my life. Review time. Next up, I couldn't help myself with this one. It was just so goofy I needed to buy this. And that's what a lot of reviews said. But what about these 1-star reviews? But before we move on to the next controller, I want to talk to you about today's sponsor, INIU Power Banks. INIU makes some of the best power banks out there, and trust me, these things are lifesavers. When my power went out recently, I wished I had one of these ready to go. My Switch was dead and I immediately thought, man, if I only had a mini power bank, I could have kept playing. Because yes, this is the smallest 20,000 milliamp hour portable battery on the market. It's literally small enough to fit in your pocket. Look at that. And also powerful enough to charge your phone, Nintendo Switch, Steam Deck, and controllers multiple times over. Plus it even has a built-in flashlight. What the heck? And if you need even more juice, the INIU 100 watt, 25,000 milliamp hour power bank is an absolute beast. It's a must-have if I have a long flight. I can charge my MacBook and game console at the same time so I can edit videos and keep my devices running the whole trip. And it's powerful enough to keep up with the upcoming Switch 2, because yes, it'll work for that as well. Both power banks come with a carrying case and an included cable. Oh, and it's durable too, I just dropped these, see? So if you want a reliable power bank for gaming, travel, or just to avoid dead devices at the worst times, click the first link in the description. Thanks to INIU for sponsoring this video. Now back to controllers. Destiny says, very disappointed, returned both. The problem was the joysticks. Way too tight of a spring, or whatever you want to call it, it snaps back to the normal position, but the worst part is how choppy the movement was. And from what I gather, a lot of people who have gotten this controller said their controller stopped working after a few weeks, so that is another thing to take into consideration. That being said, Mika says, so cute, but both died. The quality seemed good at first, it connected fine, and we enjoyed them for a while, but the trigger button popped off, and eventually the two that I bought both stopped working. So unfortunately, because they are adorable. 1 star. I'm actually super excited for this one. It's got raccoons on the top and the bottom. Me and all the other Tom Nook lasers rise up. Oh my goodness. Look at that. The top buttons connect with the ears. It makes the ears look like they're moving. Oh my goodness. It's got some back buttons. The sticks, they're not as springy as I thought they'd be. The D-pad's a little bit strange, and the nose apparently is the home button. All right, finally I get to use the mortgage controller. First off, I had to just say the connecting process on this controller was much better than the others in this video so far. Wanna know why? Because there's an actual sync button. And honestly, it's kind of cool how the lights that flash, they go vertical. It's the first time I've ever seen that, and I think I like it that way. Oh my goodness, it even lights up. What in the world? The ears are pink. But let's remember what Mika said. The quality was good at first, and Mika, I have to agree. At first, it felt solid, but I couldn't help but notice a few odd things. The main one, the trigger buttons. Mika said theirs popped off, and while mine hasn't yet, I wouldn't be surprised if it did. These buttons are loud every single time I click. Holy smokes, you wouldn't want to rob a house while clicking these things. Every time I click, it feels like there's something grinding inside. Then there are the ears. Yes, they're cute, but they're not very practical. They kind of get in the way, and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they played a part in Mika's controller falling apart entirely. Now, Destiny said that the sticks felt choppy, which pretty much means she didn't like them. Specifically, she doesn't like how the analog sticks register movement. I didn't notice this at all. It didn't feel any different than normal controllers. My biggest complaint are that the sticks are just tiny. For now, here's my review. Next up, Splatoon 3 Pro Controller replacement, which literally has inklings in the post. How is this allowed? It can't be, right? And it's the exact same design as the Splatoon 3 controller, which I have and I will compare side by side. But first, Northern Bay says, buttons are not very good. Seemed fine at first, not great, but passable for the price. But after only a couple hours of play over 2 days, it started having issues with the B button sticking. I did not use it with sticky hands, press it with excessive force, or do anything I can think of to cause it. I haven't had that issue with any of my other controllers, much less after so short a time. Looks cool, but I cannot recommend it if this is the quality norm. Maybe I was just unlucky, but given the weight associated with refunds, if I had this happen again, I'm not going to bother with a second chance. Takumi says, initial failure, didn't work properly. This product shouldn't have NFC function, however somehow it started to read Amiibo again and again. I couldn't play any games with this controller. I'd rather buy licensed by Nintendo, one even if it costs more. 1 star. So it seems to read Amiibo over and over again, and that's fine with me, because I have a lot. You probably can't see because it's blurred, but those are Amiibo. We'll see if it can even scan Amiibo in the first place. Apparently it shouldn't. Let's continue. Jamie says, does it have a battery? Where's this going? I have no idea. Or did I get a dud? Charge it to full, synced it to my Switch, played about an hour, and put it aside for later. A couple days later, I picked it up and nothing. Stone dead. I am charging it again, and it's been over 3 hours now, and it's not powering on. So either I got a complete dud, or these aren't aren't any good. On a good note, for an hour I used it, it was fairly responsive and seemed to work well. Didn't get a chance to do much extensive testing. Very unfortunate. 1 star. This is as sketchy as it can be, and well, to be honest, I'm not sure how I feel about it. Although I will say, the packaging is very Nintendo-esque. It's got the screenshot on the side of the box, the red cube in the top, the back. They kind of nailed it for making it look as real as it can be. But let's actually open it up. I have my actual official Splatoon 3 controller to compare it to. Let's hope I don't mix them up. Oh my goodness. I'm actually blown away with how similar they look. What the heck? Aside from the Nintendo Switch logo on the knockoff one, this looks very, very similar. Like if you handed this to me and told me it was the legit one, I'd probably believe you. Okay, I'm clicking the buttons. The buttons definitely don't feel as good or as premium, but everything else, like aside from that, it's not a bad controller. But as far as controllers go, and for the price, my first impressions are pretty good. It's honestly kind of crazy how similar these two controllers look. And can we spam thank you Splatoon 3 replacement controller for having a sync button as well? Also, I don't know how difficult this would be to pull off, but on the Switch itself, it actually showed up as the Splatoon 3 Pro controller, which is kind of wild, and I don't know how they're allowed to do this. Usually they just show up as generic gray controllers, but not in this case. Now, as the reviews say, the controller just apparently dies after a few days, and I'll put that to the test. But first, how does it compare to the official Nintendo Switch Pro controller? Well, actually, a lot of reviews say, wow, this is amazing. I would marry it. But clearly those people have never stood near an actual Nintendo Pro controller, because this thing is actually bad. In fact, it might be the worst one yet, except for the green and yellow Joy-Con, but those don't exist. I played the game this controller was made for, Splatoon 3. Problem is, not only do you need skill to play Splatoon 3, which I might not have, but you also need a decent controller, which I definitely don't have. This controller had the most latency out of all of the ones I've tested so far, and I really felt it during Smash Bros when some inputs just wouldn't register. And on top of that, the buttons feel cheap, and overall, it was the worst input delay I've experienced yet. Now, Northernborn's review about the buttons are pretty valid, but I wouldn't say the B button is sticky. If anything, they're actually pretty clicky, and none of them stick. So I'm sorry, Northernborn, but your review is busted. Now, Takumi, let's test your amiibo theory, because this isn't supposed to have amiibo support.
Oh wait, what the heck?
Oh my goodness, Takumi was right. For some reason, this controller detects something on the NFC chip, but it doesn't recognize it as an amiibo. And even when I tried to scan an actual amiibo, it just doesn't work. I wouldn't say this ruins the controller, since you usually have to click a button to access the amiibo option, but this is more sketchy than anything. So you know what, Takumi, your review is confirmed. Now Jamie, I'm here to answer your question. Does it have battery? And after a few days, I can confirm, yes it does. Review is busted. All right, but I think I have enough opinion on this. My review is ready. Next up is the 8-bit Do adapter, which might not sound like a controller because it's not. But this claims to allow other controllers from PlayStation and Xbox to connect to the Nintendo Switch, which in theory should help out a ton if somehow I run out of Switch controllers, which I would think would be impossible for me. I have a lot, I'm addicted. So I'm counting this as a controller. Let's read the reviews. Connection issue with Xbox controllers. Disappointed. My main reason of buying the adapter is so that I can connect my Xbox controller to my Nintendo Switch. I tried with my regular Xbox controller and with my Xbox Elite Wireless Controller Series 2. Both controllers have connection issues. I also tried troubleshooting by updating the firmware, but still end up with the same issue. 1 star. Thank you, Catherine. We will test that out with my Xbox controllers. Amazon customer, he's back! And he says, or she, I tried everything to get Xbox One and even basic Bluetooth controllers to pair with the 8-bit Do adapter. I updated controller firmware, upgraded/downgraded the 8-bit Do adapter firmware, used the 8-bit Do software on PC and via the Nintendo Switch, and nothing. Pairing lights blinked, and that's all, folks. 2 hours of wasted time that could have been avoided if 8-bit Do had better quality control. Let me grab an Xbox controller and test this theory out. Okay, I've been working on this thing for about an hour now, and it seems like I can't connect both an Xbox Series and PS5 controller to the adapter. Heck, it even says it's paired to the Switch, but when I go to press anything, literally nothing works. I have no idea why. I looked it up, I've gone on Reddit, watched videos, I even pulled out my laptop to do a full firmware update on both the adapter and the controllers, and as Amazon customer says, that's all, folks. Listen, I'd say I'm a pretty techie guy, and I'd say if I can't figure it out, then it's either a dud or so complicated that I'm not smart enough to figure it out, which is a possibility, but still, these reviews are confirmed for me. All right, it's review time. Next up, the Nixie Gamecube joycons. Now, I did a video on this a while ago, and I actually don't mind the controller as it is. But then I checked the Amazon listing, and then I looked at the reviews, and my mouth was open in shock for so long my mouth went dry. Mold! Look at these reviews. Diego Rivas says, I received it in poor condition. and then he says, black mold and mildew. That's worse than just poor condition. It's mold. I have no idea how this happens. But this isn't the only reviewer that had this issue, as GameCube controller and smelly mold box, yes, that's actually their name, says it's not the controller, it's ... The controller works fine. It's just the fact that it came in a mold package that seemed to be sitting in a water or something. I decided to return it back because the controller smelled like mold from the box, and I don't like the fact it might be in water. I decided to go with Nixie Hyperion Pro Wireless instead of Wizard. What's crazy to me is that Mr. GameCube controller and smelly mold box took it out of the box and used it. I don't know what's more crazy, the fact that there was mold in the first place, or the fact that he took it out and actually, that's insane. That's wild. All right, I've opened this controller, and no, it doesn't have mold. As funny as that would be. And this controller isn't bad either, far from it. Especially if you want to play with a GameCube controller on your Switch. It's a cool feeling using it for old GameCube remakes like The Thousand Year Door, or if you love the GameCube controller for Smash Bros. But beyond that, not much else, I guess. As for buying this controller on Amazon, maybe don't. Let's remember, some of these controllers come from third-party sellers, and it's not always from the actual company. So when I got my GameCube controller, they sent it directly to me from the company, and not from some random Amazon warehouse. How these people ended up getting their controllers wet and moldy is beyond me. But I can confirm that these reviews are busted, and kind of funny. Overall, I think it's safe to say Amazon's worst rated Switch controllers are exactly what you'd expect. Some are surprisingly decent, and some make you question reality itself. And thankfully, none of them had mold. At the end of the day, if you're looking for a Switch controller, just get an official one, or at very least, a reputable third-party brand. Anyways, if you want to see me test out popular mobile games on Nintendo Switch, click this video. And consider becoming a channel member to support me and have your name at the end of the video. I'll see you in the next one. See you later.